This is a topic that I can talk about almost forever. And but we're not gonna do forever tonight. Not tonight. We're going to we're gonna stay within our time. So this is a great call, a great session to get your friends and your family and your folks online to get this information. Can everyone see my screen? We good? Give me a thumbs up. Excellent. So we're going to be talking about the ABCs of retirement savings. Why save for retirement? And the thing about this is one of the topics that are near and dear to my heart because we have had so much misinformation. We have had $1 trillion worth of misinformation on this subject. And I'll prove it to you. $1 trillion worth. So let's get into it. What does retirement mean to you? And we've had all these different ideas about what retirement is. For some people, retirement is to go to Coshada every weekend on the bus. Okay, whatever. For some people, it's like, you know, in the winter, I'm in Florida, and then in the summer, I'm in Canada. And that sounds great. For some people, is the French Riviera this week. I mean, this year, or we're gonna spend time in Italy, or there's all kinds of different levels of retirement. For some people, is just get my rocking chair, right? My cold bear and gun smoke, and that's it. For others, I've seen others because I've worked in Medicare for about 18 years, and I see what retirement look for a lot of people that are simply not prepared. And you go there in the home, it's got about 1 millimeter of fine dust over everything because you no longer have the energy to dust. And these wonderful pictures on the wall, but nobody comes around anymore. And I don't know, but to me, that is a very sad situation. Thick burglar bars because you can't keep up with the community and moving anymore. So you just got to try to protect yourself and wait to die or something like that. That's anyway, retirement. You have to decide what retirement means to you. And for the longest time, most of the people that I met did not realize that this is their choice. Retirement doesn't just happen. You don't just get old and so, I retired. Retirement is it's a matter of money. Do you have the money to do what you want to do? Do you have the money to stop working for someone else? Do you have the money to just do the things that you've always thought about doing, and vacations and so on? Early on, retirement was a matter of how many people you have in your family. The bigger the family, the more likely you are going to be able to take off and someone could take care of you. In today's world, there are very few people that have a large family. So the thing about that today is retirement is all about money, all about money. Do you have the money to do the things that you want to do? I ask people this question all the time, and this is one of the saddest times of my business. Whenever I sit with someone and I ask this question, I feel all over again that we just missed it. We missed very, very basic information. So my question is, when I retire, and I usually ask this of people all the time, when I retire or when you retire, if your home is paid for, your cars are paid for, how much money do you need on a monthly or on an annual basis? Sometimes I say, how much money do you want to live on? And guess what? The number one answer to that question is? The number one answer is, I don't know. Now, it's like you go to the train station, you're going to buy a ticket. This ticket is going to cost 40 years of your life, but you don't know where you want to go. And that is so basic. Listen, don't feel bad. I didn't know either. I didn't even know I needed to think about that. I thought you get a good job and you work hard, and then, you're going to be able to retire because the company going to give you your pension, right? How much money do you need to live on? How much money would you want to live on? And there's so many variables to that. So let's see if we can make some sense of this, right? As far as retirement is concerned, you gotta plan for it. And yes, it can feel overwhelming. Uh, Anything that you do for the first time, if it has any degree of complexity to it, will feel a bit overwhelming. But that doesn't mean that that something is wrong or that it's an impossible. Look, you get in the shower, you turn the water on too hard or too hot or whatever. It can feel overwhelming too, but you just adjust it, right? You do what you got to do to adjust it. Just is anything that we need to do financially in life. If you don't study it, if you're not accustomed to dealing with it, it's going to feel overwhelming. But you can take your time, break it down, ask for help, consider some things, and so on and so forth. But we got to break it down. You have to think about. You got to assess your needs. What are you going to need? And whatever you do, you have to include a little bit of extra for inflation, craziness happening. You got to always have extra, right? But assess your need. Determine how much money you'll need to maintain your desired lifestyle. So that's the thing. Your lifestyle is not something that just kind of happens. You have something to say about your lifestyle. Most people end up with a lifestyle that is kind of whatever happens because they never say anything about it besides y'all hiring, y'all hiring, you just get a job and you kind of work and you live based on what they pay you, rather than saying, how would I like to live? How much money is it going to take for me to live the way I want to live? Who pays that kind of stuff? What can I do to generate the income, the funds that I need to live the way I want to live? Just as your life is right now, based on your planning, determination, work, and skills and all that, it's the same. Your retirement is going to be based on what you plan, what you determine, so on and so on and so forth, right? So you got to assess your needs and determine how much money you're going to need to maintain the desired lifestyle. Consider expenses and so on and so forth. We're going to talk about a little bit more of that. We got some tools that we want to recommend also. But, you have to understand your income sources. Income sources. Income sources. This is something that I'm really trying to help people to understand, that your retirement lifestyle shouldn't really depend on a income source. It should be income sources. If you grew up in a work world like I did, for the most part, most people are accustomed to having their income come from one source, the job, the check. And that has been encouraged because for the most part, when you work on jobs, they don't want you to talk about money, number one. And number two, they don't want to hear that you're working with anyone else. It's the level of control is crazy, especially the higher you go, the bigger your position, the more money you make is the more control they want to exert. over you and over what you do. But at the end of the day, when you retire, these companies are not going to be there with you. You have to make the decision as to how you're going to live. And you do not have to have your lifestyle or your retirement dependent on a income source. It could be income sources. So we got to kind of free our mind to understand that, right? Your income sources, Social Security, pension, retirement accounts or investments, those are different sources. And there is nothing in the world that says you can only pick one of those or maybe two. There is no reason you can have 2 or 3 or 4 income sources when you retire. It is all about a decision that you make, right? And then build your savings, right? Start saving early. When I talk to people and they love to tell me that they were saving for retirement. And I said, okay, how much you want to save for retirement? Well, I want to save $150 a month. Well, $150 a month is great if you start at about age 15 or 12 or something like that. But if you're going to save for retirement, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to get into it, right? And so, when you talk about building your savings, keep in mind that we're talking about different programs. And yes, saving in your 401k is great. It's not the only place to save. You can save in multiple places, right? And they talk about diversifying investments and so on and so forth. Diversifying investments to balance risk and growth. Listen, I believe whenever you use the word investment, you must understand the word risk. As a matter of fact, I believe investment is spelled R-I-S-K. You got to understand risk. And that's the problem is people use the word investment without understanding the word risk. It's like, I want to buy a big old pickup truck. Okay, big old pickup trucks are great. You understand $1,200 tires? Do you understand $800 tires? If you don't understand the $600 and $500, $800 tires, you don't understand big old pickup trucks. It's kind of how it works, right? So create a plan, have a plan, think about a plan. Understand, first of all, it's your responsibility. Retirement is your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It doesn't happen. You have to make it happen. It doesn't just happen, right? So we got to create a plan. It talks about, set a retirement date and outline goals and so on. We've got to do the basic, simple math. I told you earlier when I asked that question, the number one answer that I get is I don't know. Well, the number two answer that I usually get also is, nobody ever asked me that before. There's just nobody ever asked me that before. And a lot of times we're losing by default, simply because no one told us we need to think about this, or we didn't think I need to think about this, or we didn't sit down and think long enough. Okay, how does this happen? And just ask them basic questions. Listen, I told you that we're missing it by trillions, right? Well, some of the research is saying that that Americans, we've left about $1.4 trillion just abandoned. They call it abandoned 401k money. Who abandons 1.3, $1.4 trillion? And it's not that we don't care. We care, but we just don't know. We don't understand how the process works. We're not asking those questions. We're very busy working. We're working, I've been working overtime, triple time, double time. We're doing all this stuff, but we're not taking time to understand what we're doing. There's a book that I read that says that you should get knowledge, but in all you're getting, get understanding. We got to understand what's going on. And so, because we don't understand, because we don't know, because we're not taking the time to find out and to know, then what's happening is we just walk away from our money because we got to work. We got to pay the bills. We got to, the children are growing up and so on and so forth. Why save for retirement? You got to save for retirement because you may not ever want to retire. Like my uncle, my uncle now is talking about retiring. He's now going to step down from being the CEO of his $1 trillion company. And he's only 94 years old. So that's the new retirement date, y'all. New retirement time, 94, all right? He's 94 years old, one of the richest men in the world, right? Yeah, I'm talking about Warren Buffett. And he just announced, and he took them by surprise, he just announced that he's looking to step down. I think he can step down right about now, you know? And, but that's my new retirement date has been set for age 94. But the thing about it is, we have to decide that we have to prepare for this time. The thing about retirement is you may not work anymore because you choose not to and you have enough money not to have to do it. But there comes a point where sometimes in many people's lives, they would like to work, but they cannot. They would like to work, but they cannot. Now, in my own family, we had a family member that suffered a critical illness and couldn't go to work for 13 years before they died. 13 years. You know what it is to want to go to work, but cannot go to work for 13 years and then you die? Who takes care of you? Do you have enough money for that? Had another member that suffered a catastrophic, a critical illness also, and they couldn't go to work for about 7 years before they died. They looked good and everything like that, but that illness left them, in my opinion, with a severe or traumatic brain injury that they couldn't communicate. So the profession that they were trained to do and they were good at and they made good money at, they made zero at for 7 years. What happens if you cannot go to work for 5 years or 7 years or 13 years? You are forced into retirement. Do you have enough money for that? You may want to work longer. You may plan to work forever. What happens if you cannot? This is why we must save for retirement. Because life doesn't always go the way we want it to go, but it kind of goes anyway. And so it's better to be prepared and not to have to need it than to need it and not have it. And so this is why we save for retirement. We save for retirement because we got to be prepared for the future. We save for retirement because we don't know the different turns life is going to take. We save for retirement because who says we got to work for someone else all our lives? Who says we can't take some time off? And why continue to work for money if you figured out how to have money work for you, right? You call it retirement, call it restructuring. I don't care what you want to call it. But we must prepare, and it is our responsibility. And we cannot say, well, I don't know, so I'm going to walk away from my money. Don't walk away from your money. Don't do that. It's time to learn. It's time to find out. There are different tools that a person can use. One of the tools that we recommend that a person use is a financial needs analysis. Use a financial needs analysis so you can know what your expenses are, what your assets are, liabilities are. I didn't know what all this stuff meant before. But in today's world, you know everything. Just a few years ago, if you didn't know, you didn't know. In today's world, you know everything. All you got to do is get on Google, ask any question you want. There comes the information. Chat GPT, there's other AI, there's any information you want. It's right out there. I was just thinking about writing my, oh my gosh, where'd my time go to? Writing my other book. And I just said, well, let me see what AI has to say about that. I asked a question, told me uh, how to market the book. It told me how to copyright it, everything. So we know everything we need to know today. Look, I had a few other things that I wanted to talk about, but time is gone. But this Thursday coming, we're going to be talking about this subject again. We're going to talk about the subject, and I really enjoy sharing this type of information. There's so much more about this subject to talk about, but I got to stop. I'm going to turn it back over.